What I feel is so wonderful about chicken keeping and why I'm drawn to teach people about it is that it's a great unifier. That's why I call chickens humankind's most amazing common denominator, because there are very few cultures in the world that don't have chickens in them in a significant way. And that goes for people on the right and people on the left. It goes for all people, and that's what they don't want you to see. Hey guys, welcome to Chickenlandia. I am a backyard chicken educator here in the Pacific Northwest, but you can call me the president of Chickenlandia. Whenever I gear up to make one of these videos, I get so anxious. I worry that I'm gonna lose followers. I worry that people are gonna try and put me into a box and say that I represent something that I don't. But anyway, here I am. I'm gonna do this, and I promise this is not gonna be just like one long rant. I'm going to make this about chickens. There will be a chicken lesson in it, and I hope you'll stick around to the end because I'm gonna make what I think is a really important call to action. And in fact, I think it might be the most important call to action that I've ever made on this channel. This is Beast. She's a tiny chicken. In our world, there has been a story that we have told over and over again in many, many cultures, in many, many religions. The same story has repeated itself. And I think one of the most famous and one of the most well-known examples of this story is the story of David and Goliath. I'm fairly certain all of you know the story, but in case you don't, David and Goliath is a story about a little guy. His name was David, and he defeats this big giant named Goliath. And I think one of the reasons that this story is really relatable to us and really dear to us is because we all kind of have these Goliaths in our life that we hope that someday we could defeat. And, you know, I think most of us in our hearts are rooting for the little guy. And of course, I'm no exception. I grew up being told by my dad, you know, it's really important to stick up for the little guy. That is really, really important. One story that he was always telling me, even before I had heard the story of David and Goliath, was the story about his homeland. And I know I've talked about this many times before on my channel. I'm not going to go too far into it. But, you know, in his country, a big Goliath came in and they really stole the natural resources from the people there. And because of that, my mom and my dad, they had to leave their home. And, you know, my dad was so happy that he was able to give me and my siblings so much opportunity. I mean, we had great opportunity. We did very well, and I know that made him very happy, but he was also really sad for a lot of his life because he missed his home. But in his home, the Davids, they didn't win. The Goliath won. I'll put you down now. And you know, that Goliath that caused so much strife in my parents' country is still around today. Back then, they were called the United Fruit Company. Now they have a different name. They were smart enough to change their name, but you can look them up and find out who they are because they're still around with no consequences. I think the reason why the Guatemalan people could not defeat this Goliath that had came into their country and really started destroying it is because that situation caused them to go into civil war. So they were fighting each other. And my dad would tell me this is a strategy. When people are fighting, it's easier to control them. It's easier to steal from them. It's easier to oppress them. And he would tell me this is called divide and conquer. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with that. You know, when I look at our country right now and I see how divided we are, I really worry about our future and our children's future. So what does all this stuff that I'm talking about have to do with chicken keeping? Well, when I got my first flock of chickens, it really changed who I was. Before I got chickens, I was really kind of a lost soul. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. I had worn so many hats in my life, you know, and I had a family, I had a new family, you know, I have a wonderful husband. And at the time I had a little boy, a little baby boy. My first son was born. but I still had this feeling of just being lost. And when I started spending time in the chicken yard, I started working with the land that they were on, I really began to reconnect with something that has been lost in me. It sounds strange to say this, but really what happened is that in the chicken yard, I started to find out who I was. And because of that, I started to have more compassion for other people, because I really believe that when we find out more about who we are able to see who other people are too, and we're able to be more accepting of that. And that's why I say that, the answer to this mess that we're in right now is really in the soil, it's in the ground, it's in the land that we're walking on. And when we can reconnect with that, we can reconnect with each other. In our free country, there are Goliaths, and they are working very hard to keep us disconnected from the land that we walk on. They want us to be dependent on them, not just for food, but also for a false sense of community, a false sense of culture, and a false sense of happiness. In all of us, I believe there is a calling back to nature, and the way that I found it was in the chicken yard. It might be different for you, it might be like gardening for you, but this is how I found it. And if you're in the city, you still have a right to connect with nature. That is your right as a human, and it is possible. But I just think that it's really important for us to see who is trying to keep us from connecting with who we are, because it's not the Davids, it's not each other, it's the Goliaths. When I say Goliaths, I mean big corporations. That's what I mean. So obviously there is a lot of work that needs to be done, and I'm feeling this calling to concentrate more on helping people to actually be able to have chickens. I want to create some resources for people where that they can take to their local government and say, look, this is why we feel like we should be able to have chickens, so that the laws can change. So I'm really going to start putting part of my focus on that. And of course, I'm still going to offer, some fun stuff and all the educational stuff. I think it's very important for me to continue offering that. As human beings, we have a right to grow our own food. I believe that is our God-given right, to grow our own food. And we have a right to enrich our own communities and generate our own happiness in a real way that really matters to us. But the way that we will get there is together. We will not do it if we are fighting each other. So here is my first and very important call to action. I want you to find someone who you don't agree with on many things. And if the only thing that you can talk to this person about is chickens, that's what I want you to do. I want you to talk to them about chickens. And if you don't want to talk to people that you don't agree with because you're worried they won't be able to see your humanity, I want you to know that I absolutely understand that. I really do. But the only way that we can really get people to see our humanity is to show it to them. And I'm sorry, but that is the only way. That is the way to affect change. And the other thing that you can do is refuse to stop seeing their humanity. If you have knowledge in your heart, I don't want you to hold it there. I want you to go out and share it. I think that's important. And share it with people in a way that they will be able to hear it, because that's where the real work is. Okay, that was a lot. But we got through it, and here we are. So here's my second call to action. If you know somebody who's on the fence about keeping chickens, or maybe you're on the fence about keeping chickens, I want you to share this playlist with them. It's so easy. It'll make things very, very easy for them. And it's right here. It's 100% friendly, backyard chickens, education, and entertainment. And I know you're gonna love it.